Welcome to the second part of this two-part video series on how to scale a Facebook ad campaign. In case you haven't watched the first one, please go ahead and watch it first so you can understand everything we're going to talk about in this one. Before getting started, make sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the icon to receive a notification every time I release a new video. So, before we get started on how to scale, we need to define the parameters of success, right? Because right now, so far we have defined the proper framework and ad campaign structure that will help us grow and scale the ad campaigns. But if we don't establish when we should scale, when it's right, when it's not, we will scale something that we won't be ready, right? So the parameters of success will mean a different thing depending on each case. But for example, if you have an e-commerce store where you're working for a client that has one, then one thing they will be looking at is the ROAS, the CPA, and different things, right? So let's say it's the ROAS, just for the sake of the exercise. You will need to ask the client what ROAS they're comfortable with in order to scale. So let's say they tell you a 3+ ROAS. So if you don't have a 3+ ROAS, you gotta scale. You need to make things work at the low scale before scaling up. Otherwise, scaling what doesn't work, it's like doing what we showed in the previous video with the stairs, right? We show the stack of stairs that didn't lead anywhere, while a single one could lead you to get to the other side of the wall, right? So in this case, it's the same thing. If you scale something that's not working, the bad effect is going to amplify, and we don't want that. So if we are clear on the parameters of success, then we have what we need in order to grow. So to give you a better sense on a realistic parameters of success for an e-commerce, let's say we get in the cold audiences in the level 1 a 3x plus ROAS or 2x plus ROAS. This depends on each client, and you should agree on that with them, not decide that by your own, unless it's your own e-commerce store, right? But you should agree on this with them. And then it's the period of time that you consider to keep this, right? So if you say only yesterday or today, probably that wouldn't be enough. So you need to consider a few days. What we do in the agency is to at least check the last 5 days or 7 days to see a pattern, and if this is a constant thing that we can scale. If we are not getting constant results for a week or 5 days, then probably it was a day we got lucky, and that's not something ready to scale. So bottom line, 7 days, the last 7 days period to check at least. And then let's say 2-3x ROAS agreed with your client. I'm just making it up as an example. So that's by campaign, not the overall account. Of course, if you have that in the overall account, that would be great. But the thing here is that we're always scaling efforts individually. So if a campaign is performing well in the last 7 days, last 5 days, 3x ROAS, let's say that's above the threshold you agreed on with the client, then you should scale it up. And what does it mean? Okay, let me show you. So scaling things up could be vertically or horizontally. Vertically speaking, what you can do, so let me tell you this. Vertically speaking, what will help you is to scale the efforts that are already working. So you will be adding more fuel into the engine that's working, and scaling horizontally is basically adding more buckets to the campaign, or more milking cows if you want to produce more. Those are probably unproven efforts, but since things are working well, you will need to add more buckets so you have separate eggs into different buckets, right? So you have these two ways to scale up, and we're going to go more in depth in the following slides. So how this framework will help you, basically, as I was saying, it'll give you the ability to put the eggs in different buckets, right? So if you have one campaign and you rely on that and it all of a sudden starts underperforming, then you don't have any other way to make it work, right? So what do you do there? Nothing. You start crying and saying, "Oh, why didn't I create another campaign in case this one didn't work well?" So this ad campaign framework will give you different buckets so you can put those eggs into different ones. And if one is not working, you can turn it off, but then you have the other ones. It will support growth because, as I showed you in the previous video with a simple example, you can have either one campaign or two, or you can have hundreds, literally hundreds of campaigns. So it will support growth. Then it will help you show the right message in front of the right audiences. So as I told you in the previous video, having a funnel is not about having an awareness campaign, having a traffic campaign, having a conversions. That's not a proper funnel. A proper funnel actually is to show the right message to the right audience. The conversion event or the optimization event could be the same, purchases with a conversions campaign, right? But in this case, having a level one, a level two, a level three, or multiple campaigns for each of the levels will allow you to say, okay, for level one, those who have never heard of my brand before, why don't I show them an educational video, um, image ad, or whatever you want? Then for those who are warming up, I can show them a different thing. They are considering maybe buying from me or competitors. They checked out my website or they even abandoned the cart. So I need to show them different messages like why why me and not my competitors, social proof and testimonials. You can play with that, right? But this ad campaign structure will help you to do just that, to show the right message to the right audience. And of course, you can go from less to more. As I said earlier, you can start small and then you can start breaking things down to test more things and scale. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. And you can identify what's working because you don't have one campaign with a lot of mixed things. So, for instance, before using this framework, and what I see when I take over in the agency some accounts from former agencies managing that, what we see is that there's like one campaign having all things, all audiences, like add to cards, engagers, cold audiences, like everything in one campaign or even in the same ad set. And that's probably not going to help you identify what's working and giving it more fuel into those efforts and less to the ones that are not working, right? So now, enough theory, let's get to the practice. So vertical scale, an example, as I said earlier, it's important that you consider the time or the period that you're analyzing. In this case, last 7 days, it could be last 5 days, but I don't recommend this less than 3 days because it's going to be, unless you spend thousands a day, but not even then, because you want to see a constant because maybe, I don't know, the weekends are in strength and then in the week it starts underperforming on or the opposite, right? So you want to actually see a constant and then scaling up. So if we take a look at the original campaign, you will see I have the level one called purchases campaign with 500 a day as the ad spend for it. And then I put some results for an example, like 10 purchases, 3x ROAS. That's the baseline. So we analyze the last 7 days and we say, oh, this looks great. So the parameter of success was 2 plus ROAS, 3 plus ROAS for the last 7 days. So we say we are cool. How do we scale vertically? So we add more fuel into what's working. In this case, we can scale from 10 to 30% uh, the daily budget, right? So in this case, we can scale from 500 to 650. So that's 30%. And whether to choose 10%, 30%, or something in between will depend on how solid the results are. That's one thing. The second one is the margin for growth that you have for those audiences. So in this case, for for the level one, probably it's the easiest one because you can have millions or hundreds of thousands of people in your audience. But as you get to the higher levels, the audiences are not narrower, of course, and smaller, and probably you have a high frequency and you can scale up, but up to a certain level, because otherwise it will start underperforming because you will be having more fuel than people to target, and the frequency is going to go to the roof, and the effect is not going to be translated into results. So I always try to keep like 60 to 70% of the budget for the cold or level one level, and then the rest distributed into the other ones. Because if you don't have enough audience size at the top of the funnel, how are you going to get enough volume at the bottom of the funnel, right? So in this case, quick recap: if you have a campaign spending 500 a day and it's above the parameters of success, then you can scale it up by 10 to 30%. Only that campaign. Then you analyze the next campaign and the next campaign and the next campaign. Again, take a look at the frequency, take a look at different things, but that's the way to go. Horizontal scale. This is the unproven effort that you're going to implement, right? Um, but you will do it because you just want to keep scaling up. So this is the original ad campaign structure that I showed you in the part one video, right? You have two campaigns, super small ad account structure, cold level or level one, levels two, three, four together merged in one campaign. That's like as low as or as small as you can go. But then level one could be split into two. So before we had only, I mean, one campaign, and now we have two, one for interest and one for lookalike audiences, right? So you had one targeting interest and lookalikes, and now you say, oh, lookalikes are working great, interests are working good, but lookalikes, if you're using CBO, are taking all the budget. So let's split it in two. So you take out the best performing ones or the worst performing ones and leave the best performing ones in the other campaign as you consider best. But the point is that you will have two efforts and you can add more budget into the ad campaign structure, because there's no point in dividing the budget that you originally had in half. The idea of scaling up is to add more budget. So in this case, it will be a proven thing or not, depending if both of them proved to be working well. I mean, interest and lookalikes, but you'll be scaling into two campaigns. But look at this: you can scale the interest lookalike campaigns from two to four. In this case, interest from one to four, right? Interest in competitors, and you can have one competitor in one ad set. Websites they visit, like your audience visits, one per ad set. Influencers they follow, one per ad set. Job titles, I'm just making it up, right? But whatever's relevant for you and you have tested before different topics or angles. And by the way, if you haven't checked the audience or avatar creation video, check it out, because it will help you with all this. So basically, you will have, you're turning one campaign, the interest campaign you saw here, into four. And the lookalike campaign you see here, you're turning them into five or more. Customer lookalike, and then you have one ad set for 1%, the other ad set 1 to 3%, 5 to, I don't know, 3 to 5%, 5 to 7, 7 to 8, whatever percentage you want. You can organize this in this way, like per type of lookalike, or you can organize per percentage. So one campaign for lookalikes 1%, and inside you have as an ad set customer lookalike 1%, add to cart lookalike 1%, website visitor lookalike 1%, and also and the other campaign could be 1 to 3%, and the same things as ad sets 3 to 5%, and so on, right? So what I'm trying to show is that the sky's the limit. These are just examples on how to grow the ad campaign structure for both um, the interest and the lookalikes. And this is only level one. With the levels two and three, for example, you can do one campaign that you have in level 2 to go one for social engagers, and you can have Instagram engagers in one ad set, Facebook engagers in the other, or different periods are now engagers in the last 30 days, in the last 14 days, in the last 180 days. You can have video views as another one, as a third level 2 lists, as well as a fourth level 2 campaign. The same with level 3. The view content, meaning the product page visitors in the first one of the level 3 campaign. Then you can have time on site, the top visitors based on the time on site, based on visit frequency. This can scale to the sky, right? If we put together like the campaigns we put here, we have 4, we have 9, and these 5, we have 14 campaigns. So if you run them all together, like you went from a 2 campaign structure to a 14 campaign structure. So, and you can scale up and scale up. But the important thing for you is to go from less to more. Don't try to create right off the bat like a 10 ad campaign structure unless it's worth it. Try to merge efforts specifically, and yeah, especially now after iOS 14, right? You want to merge efforts and then break them down as they prove that they are working, but then you can always keep scaling. If you start too diluted, probably will fail. So you need to go not from 2 campaigns necessarily, but 3, 4, whatever makes sense for you and your client, and then you can scale it up. Okay. So I hope this was useful, and I will see you in the next video. If you liked it, please click the thumbs up and also make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.